Hi, I'm Nathan Johnson, founder of Autonomy, South Asian fat loss specialist, London's best personal trainer, and I've helped over 1,000 South Asians get in shape and stay in shape forever. I want to explain to you something no one's ever explained to you, why cardiovascular disease is higher within the South Asian community from the research. I'm not exploring taboo subjects in where I'm going to give you anything other than research. There's too many people on social media and Instagram telling you it's your seed oils or whatever they want to tell you why cardiovascular disease is higher or what to do around it. I'm going to give you the exact science. So there's research done this year that recapped the philosophy and the predictions of why cardiovascular disease is higher within the South Asian community. And it comes down to two major layers. I'm going to talk about something called vascular regeneration exhaustion. And then we're also going to talk about the transition of how that turns from type 2 diabetes into cardiovascular disease. To understand this, we need to understand the prevalence within type 2 diabetes within the South Asian community. One is the genetic element. If you are sitting there with one parent who's got type 2 diabetes, you are 44% chance likely that you're going to get it. And if you have two parents, you are 77% chance likely that you're going to have type 2 diabetes too. So the prevalence is larger within the community. Now, we haven't figured out whether it's the genetics or the lifestyle. There's always an ongoing debate in any circle, any scenario with health, fitness, finance, nature versus nurture. Was it given to them or was it made? I'm a big fan of something that you can control. So I can't control genetics. I'm 5'5". I have shoe size 5.5, burn in the sun really easily. I don't have muscle mass popping out of my skin. I wasn't given a genetic look when it came to athletic ability. I wasn't given natural talent when it came to education. So genetics is something that I don't personally rely on or like to think about because I can't do anything about it. With type 2 diabetes, which is a precursor for cardiovascular disease, is that you almost can't do anything whether your parents give you the genes or not. But you can understand what you can do because type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease, which means that you can change it and put it into remission even if you have a higher tendency to have it just by doing some lifestyle moderation. Type 1 diabetes is completely different. That gives you no insulin. Your pancreas doesn't work. You have to do all the funky stuff like inject yourself with insulin to give your pancreas the work that it's supposed to do. Whereas type 2 diabetes is all about blood sugar management and what to do with the cells. So you're either insulin resistant, you don't move a lot, you have too much insulin needed from carbohydrates and food sources. You generally have a lifestyle abundance of changes that you can make to make that a non-reality even if your parents have got it. And what we have to understand about type 2 diabetes is effectively, let's think of it this way, blood sugar regulation, where you eat food, the sugars go into your blood, and then the insulin, which is made by the pancreas, is utilized to support and transport that into particular areas, brain, muscle tissue. But think of it this way, if you have type 2 diabetes, there is an excess level of sugar within the blood. And to have an excess level of sugar, you need that transportation working quick time, double time, triple time. So your body secretes a lot more of it. Think of it this way. You go to see Taylor Swift at concert and there's public transport. On a day where Taylor Swift is playing and there's a lot more demand, there's going to be a lot more services of buses and trains and transport going in and out of the area. However, when Taylor Swift isn't playing at Wembley, there's a normal level of regulation between buses, trains, and the kind of frequency of taxis used. When you have type 2 diabetes or have higher levels of blood sugar, you're basically having Taylor Swift concert at Wembley every single day. And you know when you go to Wembley and there's always the litter around and there's always damages because people are getting too drunk, or there's just a lot more damage created by a high volume of people going to Wembley on a frequent occasion. And I'm using Wembley, if you're in the US, think of it like the Staples Center. If the Staples Center gets used at full capacity every single day, there's going to be damage, there's going to be transport issues outside, there's going to be a lot more demand and coping with that demand, which then leads to negative byproducts. That also happens within your cells too. So if the transport, like the bus, like the trains, like the Ubers, are like your insulin, which they're transporting people and is glucose, there's going to be more of it and there's more repetition. But the more the buses, the trains and the Ubers are utilizing, there's more carbon emission and a byproduct from it. So now that you get this analogy of like there's more demand for a particular thing and it's getting shuttled in and out, like Wembley or Staples Center, in and out, you can understand that potentially that if you're working on overdrive or it's game day every single day, there's going to be some wear and tear along the way, whether it's the paving outside, the buses, the trains, or just simply in the stadium itself. And that's the easiest way I can explain what a vascular regeneration exhaustion is you get vascular issues because of the vascular issues within the blood cells. That's the easiest way I can explain how blood sugar and insulin works in the body itself. And apologies if you didn't get that at all. I'm going to speak in terminology now. So when there's a higher demand for insulin because of the blood sugar, that insulin at a higher level has some negative side effects. It can damage the vascular cells in which it is present in if there's a large amount of it over a long period of time. And this happens to everybody, not just the South Asian community, is that when that is present, that is not a good thing. higher levels of blood sugar and higher levels of insulin is not a good thing long term. However, the recent research in 2024 states that the difference between Caucasian and like South Asian people with type 2 diabetes and this problem around higher levels of insulin is that the regenerative process of the vascular cells, so like basically the transport links, there is damage when insulin is present at higher levels. So the theory states that there is an issue called vascular regeneration exhaustion, which is where the body or the cells get exhausted of being regenerated and that are vascular, hence the name vascular regeneration exhaustion. And within the Caucasian community or other communities that don't have this problem, there's a regeneration and the cells get repaired. It's called proliferation, where it rebuilds and regenerates. However, within the South Asian community from the research, it seems like there's an exhaustion of the repetitive regeneration, which means that it doesn't get repaired. So the damage becomes more and more over time, leading to issues within the vascular system, hence why it says cardiovascular disease. And in short, that's where the problems start to lie, is type 2 diabetes, lots and lots of issues with the vascular system, leading to cardiovascular disease, leading to mortality at a higher rate. Now, it's interesting because in the South Asian community, there isn't all-cause mortality higher, which means Indians don't die more than white people. They just die of a specific disease more than white people. So South Asian people are no higher risk than me, walking outside and getting hit by a bus, or no more issues than me drowning in a pool than you would be. However, when we look at that particular pathway that leads to cardiovascular disease, there is a particular issue when it comes to that step-by-step process, because you rarely see people with cardiovascular disease who don't have type 2 diabetes, that don't have high cholesterol. That's the end point. The end game is cardiovascular disease. There is steps by step before that get to that point. So it's not the warning sign, it's the end stages of something that is negative to our health. And I want you to know that, because within the community, I speak to people all the time like, oh yeah, my parents, they've got type 2 diabetes, so I was kind of expecting it. And now that I know the research, I'm like, wow, well, you need to be sorting this out earlier. Like, I don't think people realize that type 2 diabetes leads to cardiovascular disease, not that it just is, oh, I've got type 2 and as long as I control my blood sugars, I'm fine. It's like, no, like that's having lasting effects, especially because you have vascular regeneration exhaustion, which means it doesn't repair itself as best as it could do. I was just thinking about this because I've just recently recorded and made a school South Asian health and fitness community or fat loss community where you can buy a course from us to understand your genetics, your lifestyles, the psychology, the physiology of being South Asian and trying to get in amazing shape. And I was doing a presentation for a bunch of people that wanted to understand around the genetics, and I wanted to kind of frame this in the best way. And the way that I came up with was, think of it as a scratch on your arm, and we repair those and it heals up its scabs and then it kind of goes back to normal without sometimes like lasting scars. But I would imagine that because of this vascular exhaustion, that scar just keeps on getting deeper and deeper and deeper and doesn't end up rebuilding itself. So then that becomes, instead of a scar or a little prick, it becomes a big wound and then a bigger wound and then a bigger wound, and now it's a hole. And that's how I would explain it when it comes to the problems of the South Asian community versus like if I was doing it. It's like mine repairs, heals and kind of regenerates to a degree. Yours would be slower and may lead, if repeated, to that negative outcome of cardiovascular disease. So the easiest way to say it is you just don't have the free leeway to not do something about it because your body isn't repairing as fast as another race would. And that's the theories of 2024 when it comes to why cardiovascular disease is higher within the South Asian community, rather than just saying, oh, we die or we got these issues, the genetics. It's like you can see the cascading effects that lead to that position being there. And there's loads of other cardiovascular diseases that come from like high cholesterol, for example, but they all generally sit within like a remit of lifestyle. I've been doing this 10 years as a PT, 7 within the South Asia community, and I've only really seen 1 to 2 people who changed their life completely, dropped 20 plus kilos, and didn't actually get rid of their high cholesterol status from their blood work. That's out of 1,000 plus. They were people that had high cholesterol prior to working with me, noted by a doctor, and we went through all of the lifestyle changes, all of the lifestyle variables, dropped the weight, healthy, cleaned up their diet, eating better, keeping their weight off, exercising more, and only 2 people out the last 10 years that I've worked with haven't lowered their numbers into a normal range. Their numbers were just higher based on a genetic factor, and they have to then go and medicate that based on the need to want to keep those numbers lower. So what I'm saying is like these things happen because of our lifestyles, and even if they have a higher determinant of genetics, his name was Ziad, he's Lebanese, one of my first ever clients that wasn't South Asian. He's in a far better place now, even though he's lost 20 kilos and he's keeping his weight off and he's having a great time. He's still in a better place than he would be if he had those 20 kilos and still had high cholesterol, because we've took risk factors away. So I wanted to share with you the process that probably no one's ever explained to you about the determination of how how type 2 or pre-diabetes turns into cardiovascular disease. And the beautiful thing is that if you catch it early enough, it's not going to make a massive factor. If you get to the point where you've got cardiovascular disease, you have a less likely chance that it's going to be a positive outcome versus when you first get your HbA1c taken and it's high, or you first get your diagnosis that you are type 2 diabetic. Because of that regeneration that doesn't heal, every day, every month, every week, every year that you don't do anything about it, those wounds are getting bigger and creating bigger problems, and bigger problems leading to those cascades. It isn't a scot-free example. And that's another thing that I spoke about within the course, is like, it just is, you might have to do a bit more and stay on top of it a lot more because you don't have the luxury of it healing itself. Another way to look at this as well is that at South Asian community, if you have these things, the detriment is worse. So if we do the same thing, you just have a worse detriment because of that exhaustion of the cells. So the more that you dig yourself into that proverbial grave, the less easier it is to come out of because of these factors. But the beautiful thing about like type 2 diabetes, and when you catch it earlier, is that you literally have to lose 10% of your body weight to put it into remission. That's the good research. Is like 80% of people that lose 10% of their body weight and keep it off, get rid of their type 2 diagnosis, they put it into remission, or obviously move it away because of their lifestyle factors. It's literally one of the most easiest things to do in terms of practicality and logic, but most people don't see it as a big factor or a big reason to make that change. And that's why I'm explaining the whole process to you, because it kind of is a big deal. You won't see me sitting here saying, oh, you need to do this for type 2 diabetes, you need to do this to regulate your blood sugar, you need to do this supplement or this type of food, because most importantly, the level of body fat that you have in your midsection determines whether you have type 2 diabetes. That is the biggest singular risk factor. Central adiposity creates a higher likelihood that you're going to have type 2 diabetes, which if we know that the central adiposity is already accustomed to the South Asian community, we're already playing with devil if we don't sort it out. And that's why you won't see me saying bergamot, metformin, fiber-based foods, veggies, and swapping out, having oats, for example, because it doesn't matter how many of those foods that you have that are full with your glucose or with your blood sugar management. If you're still overweight and have high levels of central adiposity, you're doing the least effective thing for you not to have type 2 diabetes. And because having central adiposity is, everyone knows it, and it's the hardest to change from a habit, a behavior, and an eating lifestyle, it becomes overlooked. People don't want to look at the boring, the basic stuff. They want to look at the sexy things. That's a psychology. So the psychology of you searching out for new methods, new things, Ozempic, high fiber roti, for example, having more kidney beans, oats, as opposed to, cereals, for example, it's our way of searching for an answer that is easier than the truth. Because if I give you this, I think this is if I'm teaching my parents. If I wanted my parents to live longer and I wanted my parents to have the least health consequences possible, I would tell them to lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds if you're looking at my dad, because that's the biggest bang for your buck variable. And if we don't look for the shiny thing, the thing that has the least effort, and we look for the most cost effective and effective in terms of efficiency, effectiveness, timescale, health benefits, longevity benefits, it's losing the excess weight. And there's a whole cascade of things that means that weight loss is not glorified or actually looked at within the South Asia community, whether it's you're looking too skinny or what it means from a family perspective, if someone is healthy and chubby. But there has to be acknowledgement that whether it's a white guy saying it or it's someone else saying it, is that this leads to this, that leads to that. And I just don't think people connect all the dots together because they're so consumed by not wanting to change that big thing, which is you need to eat less food. You need to tackle some of the hard things within your day, which is saying no to extra portions, not being gluttonous all the time, not eating healthy and be happy, and actually be more specific, because healthy and happy are when you have lower body fat so that you're not getting cardiovascular disease. There's a whole point of what really healthy and happy means. Chubby and healthy can be useful, but when chubby turns into high levels of central adiposity, it becomes detrimental. So if I was looking at it, I don't want my mum telling me you're healthy because you're chubby. I'm like, Mum, I've got type 2 diabetes. How the fuck is that working? So I think there's a large element to tackle, and that's what I try and aim to do on a day-to-day basis. And that's why we do these longer form podcasts, because I don't want to just be seen as this white guy that's working with the South Asia community because people think I'm doing it for financial gain. They think I'm doing it because I'm just picking someone to pick on, whereas I've been doing this for years, even before Autonomy even started, in the background, working for 7 years with the South Asia community for another company beforehand, who I didn't get to choose who I was working with. I just worked with people, and I want there to just be a place in which this is the facts, and we will do as much as we can to to cater towards traditional food and being encouraging for you to have takeaways and social lives and live a normal lifestyle. But there is changes that need to be made. If the repeatable habits are of type 2 diabetes, there must be change, because nobody wants to die early, right? Cardiovascular disease. I wouldn't want my parents dying earlier than they need to. I don't want to die earlier than I need to. I don't want my kids dying earlier than they need to. And it comes down to looking at the big picture and picking the fights with the things that actually matter. So just to confirm after my ramble, central adiposity has a higher prevalence of leading to type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes and higher levels of that and consistent levels of that lead to higher insulin. Higher levels of insulin lead to some damage within the vascular cells, which leads to vascular regeneration, exhaustion within the South Asian community, which then leads to downstream effects of not being able to regenerate the healing process of the issues of type 2 diabetes. That level of regenerative exhaustion leads to complications with cardiovascular disease. If you have all of this chain plus the other chain of high cholesterol, well, then you're adding to risk factors by 10x, and you're having inactivity and food as big parameters too. You're leading down that stream. And that's what I want you to understand when you're looking at whether I need to take action with my pre-diabetes or I need to take action with my type 2. Oh, it's not too bad, or my central adiposity. Oh, I don't want to get too skinny. It's like, I would rather be a little skinnier than what your mum wants and not have cardiovascular disease, because I'd want to live longer than someone else's validation. So that's really, really important to note. And I know it's hard because food is great. Food is awesome. Food tastes fucking amazing, but too much of a good thing, as they say, is kind of the adage here. Hope that helps.